AM 1480 WLEA.
Assemblyman Phil Palmesano is our guest today.
Next on News Talk, AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show with Kevin Doran.
Brian O'Neill in for Kevin Doran, on with Assemblyman Phil Palmesano. Assemblyman, thanks for calling in.
Oh, Brian, it's good to be with you again.
Assemblyman, Mayor Sean Hogan is asking area residents now, both in and outside of Hornell, people in the area, to help save St. James by sending letters to Trinity Health in Livonia, Michigan. Any thoughts on the mayor's idea here?
Listen, I think at this point, Brian, we should be writing to everyone we can. I think Trinity Health is a good one. I think we should be writing to the governor's office. I think we should be writing to whoever we can, and I think it's going to be a community effort. I'm encouraged by what I see going on in the community with the yard signs and the petition process, and the surrounding municipalities also passing resolutions in support of keeping vital inpatient services at St. James Hospital here in the Hornell area. It's important that the community gets behind this effort, and I think we need to send messages to these organizations that might not be here in New York, but to let them know how important it is and how much it means to us here, and how important it is to keep those services here. And I would expand upon what the mayor says and say we should also write to the governor and the Department of Health and anyone else who we can communicate with.
State Assemblyman, before we went on the air, we were emailing back and forth. You mentioned an insurance settlement worth billions. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, over the past several months, there's been articles and settlements that have been taking place with banks in New York State, and I think we're up almost around $5 billion in settlement funds.
Is this from the State Attorney General's office, Eric Schneiderman?
Well, part of it's through there, and part of it's just through the settlements through our financial services industry and the people there working with the state. But this is money that now the state has, and there's going to be a lot of question with that type of money, how it's spent. People are already trying to, get their ideas out there how to spend the money.
You hear this mayor of Syracuse asking for $1 billion.
Well, yeah, they're all asking for money, and I know education wants the money. I know there's a lot of ideas out there for the money. The thing is, and I do agree with the governor, it shouldn't be going for recurring revenue because it's a one-time influx of a lot of money, and those types of things should be things that can make an impact. I mean, listen, we still have a tremendous amount of debt. We should be looking at some debt relief. We should be looking at, rainy day funds reserves, so when we get into a financial problems, we have that funds to help us. I also am a big believer in spending money on infrastructure. Our roads and our bridges are deteriorating. We've talked about this over and over again, but it can't just be money for our state roads and our state bridges. There has to be funding that comes down to the local level through our local CHIPS formula. It's the acronym for our program that funds our local roads and bridges in our local municipalities. They decide how to spend that money. I'd like to see a lot of that money go into that type of formula, which is equitably spread between New York City and Long Island and upstate. It's a good formula that works for our localities, and have that money go right into our local communities. Let them decide how to spend the money. Give them flexibility on how to control that money so they can do big projects over a period of time. And, that when you're spending money on infrastructure, that's improving your local infrastructure, water and sewer, roads and bridges. That no one creates jobs, but it creates a better infrastructure, which helps promote economic development and provides a tool to help recruit businesses into your community. And if we need to make sure there's a channel for that money to go into the local community, and it's local control and not just the state of New York and the governor controlling that money. It needs to be controlled at the local level, and that's something we're going to just continue to push on for, that funding to go right into the local city of Hornell, town of Hornellsville, Canisteo, the surrounding communities. Let those towns determine how they use that money rather than the state of New York.
Well, the obvious question that occurs probably to a lot of our listeners right now, there's a lot of settlement money. What about St. James Hospital in Hornell, New York?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a funding mechanism in place now to help with healthcare organizations to try to get them back on track, and that's something that we're going to actually work to push for to make sure to see if St. James can get some of that money, especially when they're talking about a new facility. Obviously that whole restructuring case is going on right now. We're going to continue to make the case that healthcare services, vital health care services need to be preserved and maintained here in the Hornell area, and particularly inpatient and maternity services, which is has been talked about not being maintained. We're continuing to make that case of the need for that, and also to have a facility that can, be current and up to date with the type of infrastructure it needs and updates that it needs that has been neglected in the past. And we need to make sure that we get a facility that can deliver the type of health care that our residents need and deserve. And so it's always a balance of funding, Brian, and what the priorities are. There's things we can look at trying to do, at the federal level with funding for our hospitals, and, you have the Obamacare, which has an impact. And there's a lot of moving pieces and a lot of moving parts, and, we're going to do our best, and we're working as a team. This is not the mayor and Deputy Mayor Buckley and Mayor Hogan and the council and the community, along with our state legislative delegation and our federal delegation led by Tom Reed. We're going to continue to push on this and make the case the best we can. But we have to work hard on this, and we certainly will.
The state controller was on Capitol Press Room on NPR with Susan Arbetter this week. Arbetter asked State Controller DiNapoli about the money that the governor wants for upstate, additional money besides the money going to Buffalo.
It would be like a Buffalo billion, but for everyone else. Is that an idea worth considering?
Well, certainly it's legitimate to have it on the table as part of the negotiations. It would seem to me, though, that infrastructure, paying down debt, I'll throw something else on the table maybe to be considered. We've been talking about the fact that unlike pensions where you do have money put aside to pay for that long-term obligation, what's called OPEB, other post-employment benefits, particularly retiree health care, is a looming cost down the road that we do not pre-fund. I've argued in the past and going to argue for again the creation of an OPEB trust fund so we could start to put money aside to pay for those growing retiree health care costs down the road.
Other post-employment benefits. DiNapoli there, the state controller, talking about state employees. Assemblyman Palmesano, 2 questions. The first question, your thoughts on DiNapoli kind of discouraging the rest of the state outside of Buffalo from getting an upstate billion?
Well, I think we have really got to pause and before we talk about spending money in a whole bunch of different places to see, if we're talking about using the settlement money or existing revenues and existing budget structure. Because the settlement money, as we talked about earlier, is a one-time funding stream that's coming in. So it shouldn't be getting there to plug holes in budgets and being used for recurring operational expenses. I know when we get back there in January after the governor lays out his budget proposal, there's going to be a lot of push and pull on both sides. The fortunate thing is, compared to where we were 4 years ago when we talked, Brian, we had a $10 billion budget deficit. We were looking at $15 billion over 2 years and $37 billion over 4 years. We're past that process now, which is a good thing. But we still have a long way to go, and we need to, whatever we do, and the crux, in my opinion, needs to be something that's going to spur economic development and job creation in this state. That's going to encourage private sector investment and capital back into our local economy, because that will create a spin cycle that's going to, you have that private sector investment that goes in the economy, you create local jobs, good-paying jobs, but you create local tax revenue because individuals go to the store and they provide taxes that helps grow the economy, and then you have those dollars, those state tax dollars, to fund important programs like infrastructure, like our schools. So I know there's going to be a lot of pushing. I don't know a lot of specifics about some of the things that Mr. DiNapoli was talking about, but I know Syracuse is talking about getting their billion, just like Buffalo did. I'm talking about there's more to upstate New York than Buffalo and Syracuse. The southern tier certainly needs some attention from this governor and this administration. I can't remember the last time he's visited here, but we'll continue to push and work with him wherever we can and scream out that, the southern tier needs some attention too. We have, our challenges and our problems here, and, we have people here that are struggling and people who are trying to keep jobs and grow businesses here, and they certainly need some attention too. But it's not all about spending money. It's about creating an environment that encourages investment in our economy, especially private sector investment that creates good-paying private sector jobs that will help spur our economy, that produces the revenue that we need to fund our important programs.
Assemblyman, I had a couple of questions on this, the settlement money, and also this idea of a lot of money for upstate areas outside of Buffalo. Number one, who's in charge of doling that money out?
Well, it's not there now, but obviously I think the state's going to be in charge of that. I think the governor is someone who likes total control of these pots of money, just like you have these regional economic development council awards that are going to be doled out at the end of next week. It's basically the state kind of saying where the money goes.
Would the state controller, wouldn't he be?
He has to sign off on auditing and making sure things are done properly. I like the idea of providing funds more directly to our local communities. CHIPS program I talked about, that goes money that goes right to the local communities to fund local roads and bridges. There's the AIM program that provides direct assistance right to municipalities so they can deal with their operational expenses and the problems that they're having. That goes for counties and towns and villages. That's a worthwhile program in my opinion. But at the end of the day, we still got to work to create a climate that's going to encourage the type of investment, that private sector investment, that will create good-paying jobs, that will help turn our economy around. Because our economy is not turned around yet. We're still rated 49th in business climate. So I know when we have surpluses and money to spend, people come out and they say we need to spend here and spend there. But we also need to make sure we're saving for a rainy day. We also need to make sure that we're dealing with our debt load that we have in this state.
We're talking with Assemblyman Phil Palmesano here on the Newsmaker Show. When we get back, we're going to talk about some of the public appearances he's going to be making very soon. Stay with us. Back on the Newsmaker Show, Brian O'Neill on with Assemblyman Phil Palmesano. I'm filling in for Kevin Doran today. Assemblyman Palmesano, you were just in Kenesteel for a Kenesteel Greenwood Honor Society get-together. You're in Corning today for that emergency preparedness meeting that'll be at Corning Painted Post. Can you tell us about that appearance in Corning later today?
Yes, there's a seminar forum that was put on earlier in the year in Hornell. It's part of a program that's being conducted throughout the state to basically educate and provide awareness and training for citizens in our local communities to deal with emergencies. You see it just last week with the huge snowstorm in Buffalo, the flooding up in Yates County and across the southern tier. These types of things happen more regularly. And I think, and how often have you heard, if there's a disaster, if your power goes out, have a kit ready with some basic essentials just to have in your hand. They provide a kit, backpack of some of these emergency items for the attendees. There's no cost to attend, but the National Guard, Office of Emergency Services, and Homeland Security will come in there and talk and educate and train about being prepared for some of these disasters. And we've been helping to try to get the word out. If you weren't able to make the one in Hornell, we encourage you to please come out to the one in Corning. You have to register online at the website that's available there. And I don't have that in front of me, Brian, but if you're talking about it or call our office, we can give you that. But that's an important thing that's being held in our community. And I would encourage people to register and come over to Corning tonight for that seminar that's being put on.
A meeting about St. James Hospital. That's a town hall Thursday from 6:30 to 7:30 at the main place on Main Street in Hornell. Also, there's going to be an Office of the Aging meeting over at one of the churches in Bath on Thursday. Can you tell us about that, Assemblyman?
Yes, we're partnering with the Steuben County Office of the Aging to provide awareness and education to our seniors about programs that are available. So this Thursday, or tomorrow, from 10 to 12 at the Centenary United Methodist Church on 3 West Washington Street, Bath. The director of the New York State Office of the Aging and the executive director for the New York State Office of the Aging will be there to speak to the group. There will be booths set up with educational materials and information. So if you're free, I would encourage you to please attend this forum. I'll be there to say a few opening remarks, but it's really about providing information and education for our seniors to make sure that they're made available the resources and services that they're entitled to and deserve.
And finally, Assemblyman Palmesano, you wanted to say something about your collection drive for items and gifts for soldiers this holiday season.
Yes, partnering with some of my colleagues up in the Finger Lakes region, with Senator Michael Mazzolio out of Seneca County area, and we're collecting non-perishable items to send to our troops overseas in according to harm's way. You can get that information out. If you get it to my office by Tuesday, by close of business on December 9th, we'll make sure that those materials that you donate get to our troops as part of a package that we're all working together to get information and products out to our brave men and women who are protecting us as we are here enjoying the holiday season.
Assemblyman Phil Palmesano, I want to thank you very much for joining us on the Newsmaker Show today.
Thank you, Brian. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
And Brian O'Neill filling in for Kevin Doran. NBC is next on AM 1480 WLEA Hornell.